Stanisław Barszczak, Gods from Outer Space. Gods from Outer Space is the story of a young Italian woman named Cora, who in 1945 comes to Buenos Aires with a few clothes and family violins, fascinated by new music that can be heard in courtyard, bars and brothels. She joins a group of musicians with her instrument, but to play tango, he has to pass for a man. So Cora takes the name of her deceased husband and puts on an outfit that hides her gender. This is how an extraordinary fate begins. Introduction. Stefan, my husband, died a happy man, a freak known to have a coffin at home. Montevideo gossipers have been speculating about this coffin for years. It's a vampire, madman. He's terrified of death. He keeps his violin in it. The coffin is covered with a witch spell, and that's why every time that old bastard starts playing, something is tearing your soul apart. But they never guessed the real reason. The last moment found him in the kitchen. Suddenly something tugged at his heart, as if a huge brush had pierced his chest and painted the inside of it white. He couldn't breathe. He tried to tighten his fingers on the edge of the table, but his hand found nothing. Somewhere far away, something rattled. It wasn't the pain, it was the pressure that forced him to collapse into himself, almost sweet, and bury all his secrets under a pile of rubble. But Cora's last thought wasn't about mysteries, like his husband, music, God, or even the woman who filled her life with joy. It was about Cora. Cora, baby, come closer. You are here. Take my hand. Stefan said, if there is light, lead me to it. If not, I am not afraid, because you are with me. You are here, radiant, just like before it all started. Stefan reached for Cora's hand, and she smiled and opened her mouth as a stream of light poured out. Part 1. Think of nothing, think of home, Cora repeated her husband's last words, for she still felt great gratitude for bringing her a new land closer to her. Cora arrived in Argentina on February 4th, 1945, on the steamboat that made Italy disappear 20 days earlier, swallowed by the hungry monster called the Horizon. On the last morning on deck, she dressed carefully, and when the porter came to bring her trunk on board, she closed it tightly so that nothing could fall out, not a sleeve, a speck of dust, or even a stray memory. Then she sat down silently. The woman who shared the bunk with her, Ella, had left the sheets crumpled. She was no doubt already on board, craning her neck out to gaze out at the shores of Buenos Aires. If Cora didn't find him in the crowd, she might never see him again. You imagine. A strange thought after she shared a cabin 20 consecutive nights with a woman who was not her relative and whom she met only on the first day of the voyage. Strangers, a feeling of alienation, these two things accompanied her on her trip to South America. She wondered what her mother would say if she were with her in its small, stuffy room. Here we are. It smells like a pigsty in here. Oh, for God's sake, Cora, adjust the cap. She told herself that one day she would see her mother again, father, cousins, uncles, aunts, and her great-grandmother's constantly moving hands, although all of this was untrue. In these years that followed, Cora would see many things that would stun her, cause her soul to shatter and take forms she had never dreamed of. But she would never see her family again. She was sitting on the trunk she had taken from home. How little was inside of her. Neatly folded dresses, a few books, a jar of olives in a marinade prepared by the baker's wife, hazelnuts wrapped in thick linen, the father's violin, handed down in the family from generation to generation, left Italy for the first time to become a gift to her husband. It was her grandfather who kept telling her the violin story, as if repeating it might soothe the sense of loss, as if the history of mankind had not been written in the books and collections of mythical universities in Rome, Naples, or Bologna, which no one in the village had ever seen but in objects like this. In a violin touched by hundreds of hands, loved, used, stroked, and pressed to the breast, objects that outlived their owners and kept the secrets and lies. Imagine, my grandfather said that until the year 1500, this violin belonged to the King of Naples. Yes, it's true. Don't you dare to doubt it? No one knows how long they were in the royal family. But no matter who they belonged to before, there is no doubt that they ended up in the hands of Frederick of Aragonese, the last transteamer King of Naples. He was a quiet, kind man who, whether he looked it or not, had to face two forces, two nations, Spain and France, sharpening the claws on his throne, still weakened after the two short reigns of his father, brother, and nephew who ruled before him. Do you understand me, Cora? He has tried to reign, but it is enough for the opponents to join forces with your unlucky star, and suddenly you are surrounded with nowhere to run. So what are you doing? I tell you, the choice is simple. Either you die or, as you stand, you flee to another country and start a completely new life. This is what Frederick did. He ran away. He left his country, however, not as a free man, but as a prisoner, surrounded by soldiers. Before he left, before the guards came for him, he opened his bedroom window, looked down at Naples, and played the violin. He played a morning piece that seemed to be coming from the center of the earth. The only person who heard him was a certain count. He later said that it was the saddest and most beautiful music he had ever heard in his life. When the king stopped playing, he gave the count the violin. "Keep them," he said. "I'll never play again." The earl at first protested. "What about your sons?" he asked. King Frederick only shook his head. "The violin must stay here," he replied. Nobody knows if the king, exiled to France, played the violin at any time. It is one of those details that has been lost forever in the depths of time. So, Cora, you will not find out from me. It is known, however, that the count kept the violin and passed it on to the next generations of his family, which finally, in 1818, sold the instrument to my great-grandfather to pay off debts. With him, my grandfathers learned the story of the King of Naples and his farewell to the city, which of course increased the value of the violin, whether or not the story was true, Cora thought, but did not say it aloud, as my grandfather had no doubts about its authenticity. And so the king himself played this violin on the last day of Naples, as an independent kingdom. What exactly did Frederick play? What was that music like? We'll never find out. This is how it is with melodies. They fly into the air and die there, just like memories and the body. Memories, melodies, and bodies disappear with our death. The instrument is not like the body. It is like a soul that lasts even when we are gone. Cora went on deck. It was a hot, humid day, and sweat beaded on the foreheads of men, who were far more numerous than women. Most of them were young, though only a few were 17 years old like her. There was hope and feverish anticipation in the eyes. 368 taut human strings. Among the women there were mostly wives on the way to meet their husband in Buenos Aires, as was Ella. And me, she thought. Remember, she rebuked herself, that you were also a wife. The deck was swarming with people, as on the day the ship left Naples. Nobody played cards to pass the time. Boredom, like unnecessary ballast, was thrown overboard. Everyone was on their feet and crowding the railing, stretching their necks towards the land. Argentina. Cora started squeezing towards the railing. On the right, a young woman was praying the rosary in a whisper. To the left, a man in his 40s was wiping away tears, while the young man standing next to him was smoking a cigarette with indifference. Cora thought, something that was meant to pass for indifference. His attitude seemed theatrical. Cora smelled sweat, cigarette smoke, and the sharp scent of cologne. A little further, 3 or 4 rows in front, 2 men were talking in raised voices about the land they had seen. Beautiful, beautiful, yes, they repeated it ad nauseam, as if saying these words aloud would reassure them that what they were saying was the truth that would give them strength when they went ashore. Their voices carried among the groans and grunts of the crowds. Cora gently pushed forward. The man in front of her pulled away, apparently fed up with the views, so she slipped into his place before anyone else could notice them. It missed a view of land, but not just any land. She wanted to finally see Buenos Aires, her new home. Over the past 3 weeks, she had often protruded by the railing alone, staring out at the endless waters of the ocean and imagining what the city she was headed for, but all she could see was the lush tropical ferns and trees of the botanical garden where Stefan had taken a picture of himself upon arrival, to send them to her family. Suddenly, Cora succumbed to the wave of memories in her mind. Photography passed from hand to hand over Sunday lunch, she remembered, with a puff of both admiration and consternation. He's really happy in Argentina. Looks happy. He's too skinny. Look at these parrots. They're so big they could eat it. Don't be funny, Ella. They are not real. It's just painted woods. Where do you get that confidence? I have eyes. You don't know anything, you idiot. For God's sake, this quarrel is over. Cora's mother chided them. How about we let our future wife take a look at them? Exactly. Cora remembered her home. Do you want to see them? The photo fell into her hands. In the photo, Stefan was standing among strange ferns with enormous leaves, accompanied by 2 parrots, which, contrary to what her brother had said, seemed very much alive. He was holding an unlit cigarette and smiling knowingly. I am the master of this place, his pose seemed to say. Of course, just because he found a photographer here to take a picture of him, it didn't mean the whole city looked like that. She knew it, or at least a part of her knew it. However, the image stuck in her head for good. Anew. Now, on the steamer, she wondered what her first time with Stefan would look like tonight in Buenos Aires. How he would touch her and how long it would all take. Will she feel pain or pleasure like brides in ballets? Will she think about the fig trees in the orchard? How their fruit shines when squeezed between her fingers? Or maybe she won't think about anything. Maybe she'll be thinking about home. The group of men in front of her had apparently seen the approaching land already, and as they pulled away, Cora stood by the railing and leaned against it. The wind whipped her face and filled her nostrils with salty air. She feared that she might tear the blue cap off her head. Even tough she pinned it on with pins and the loss of the cap. The most beautiful thing she had ever worn, decorated with real pearls that her mother said would suit her future wife, would be unbearable. Yes, so she held it with both hands. The crowd around her think each of the 368 Italians aboard had imagined his own vision of Argentina, while Cora looked at Buenos Aires in the distance. The buildings still seemed so small that she could tell nothing more about them except that they existed. That while she and her fellow countrymen still had no idea what awaited them after they disembarked, at least they would find something there, a real place that will make them realize why they really crossed the ocean and that America is more than a fairy tale invented by shipping companies, ticketing agencies, and relatives with letters they wrote home. Even if seeing with your own eyes that America existed did not reveal a real secret, a mystery that was much more difficult to unravel. Exactly what the unknown land really was. Cora stood by the railing for a long time and watched Buenos Aires drifting towards her, and since she did not dare to imagine its structures or how she would find herself among them, she imagined herself and Stefan in the botanical garden, walking among the exotic ferns and sleeping under huge leaves that resembled the wings of a great gentle swan. Part 2. Cora's wedding was quick, modest, and ended before the host could no longer taste the host of her tongue. She found herself in a small church behind the village. It was not the Basilica of Francis, let alone the Florentine Duomo, and certainly not the legendary Cathedral of Seville. Certainly, across the ocean, the world also turns and normal life goes on. No one refers to the Second World War anymore. As the bridge a groom lived on different continents, the ceremony in Italy before the journey was attended by an attorney. On behalf of Stefan, his father Matteo, Cora's uncle, stood at the altar. The bride wore a simple linen dress that she had borrowed in a hurry from her cousin. She was too short for her. Cora was the tallest girl in Assisi and wrinkled on her hips, but with white carnations in her hand and in her hair, and with a string of mother's pearls around her neck, the bride looked good enough to please the crowd of relatives and the melancholy priest. She would wear her mother's wedding dress, as was customary, but since the wedding was to take place immediately, and the bride was to board the ship to Argentina the day after, there was no time for alteration. Tough her mother was not as plump in her youth as she is now, she could boast of curves as evidenced by the dress, sensual shapes that made Cora, devoid of hips and breasts, rather modest. How is it possible that I gave birth to a girl who lacks feminine attributes? Her mother would say sometimes. However, they both knew the answer. In my grandfather's family, there were two great uncles who were famous for their equally unfeminine shapes. They lived their lives as old virgins because of their tall, slanted bodies, fierce characters, and tendency to stick together as if they were pulled out of the same box. People called them nails. As she stood at the altar and listened to the priest's murmurs, Cora had the impression that she sensed the relief with which her mother had received the news that her daughter was getting married, and thus she would avoid the fate of the nails. The girl did not know, however, whether the relief was stronger than the sadness that this daughter would soon leave for a distant foreign country. Ever since Stefan sent a letter in which he wrote, "Send Cora, I'm ready," there was a sense of tension in his mother's behavior. For good and for bad, the priest asked. "Si," he replied, "Zio Matteo." "Si," Cora repeated, her voice echoing off the arched ceiling so that the figures of the saint trembled in the niches. Then they repeated the words of the oath. Zio Matteo did not look at her. He always had an impenetrable mind. He was the type of man who seemed to live outside his body. During family gathering, he would remain silent or deliver long, passionate monologues that no one had the courage to interrupt. Even now, marrying his son, Cora couldn't read the face of her. There was no message in it, no blessing, just a bored acceptance, as if he were fulfilling a duty, the result of which he was completely indifferent to, as if he hadn't thought about his youngest son in Argentina at all, about the sweat and noise that filled Stefan's days, the lonely nights, and the married life he was about to start. As if he got tired of being the head of the family and the whole ceremony, which for him was nothing more than a chore, or a very troubled patriarch doing his duty at the altar. However, Zio Matteo was a liar, a fraud. Cora felt disgust by pledging the man. Because of him, a curse hung over the family so powerful that even death was unable to lift it. A curse that could have ruined her marriage before it even started. She reminded herself that her uncle was only replacing the groom, but the repulsion remained, clutching her stomach and disturbing the peace of the church. It was winter, an unusual time for wedding, and as the handful of guests walked up the steps to the square, Cora felt the cold air bite her cheeks. She imagined that the world would look a little different than when she entered the church, that it would shine with a secret glow, visible only to newlyweds. That she will be able to see the hidden structure that will make this world more understandable and closer to what she carried within herself. Countless times she had heard the words, "You'll understand when you grow up," and here she was standing on the threshold of femininity. However, the spell did not work. The world was the same. Her brother Tommaso was saying something as always, making her father's laugh, but she didn't hear them talking. Papa led her by the arm, and the gentle, almost shy touch comforted her. "I swear it's true." He got a punch right in the well. "You know where?" her brother said. Father laughed again, a little too loud this time, and the sound that came from his mouth was low and guttural. Their mother followed them, radiating chaos. The three kids crowded around her as did the other children and the mothers. What were the women talking about? Single woman, single words fell to Cora's ears. Grandson, oranges, and never ripe. Their voices rose and fell in melodic waves. Zio Matteo and his eldest son Mario walked in a silence. As they crossed the square, their footsteps echoed off the cobblestones, the same round, grey, uneven stones that Cora's ancestors had walked on when they went to mass, play chess, or wash clothes in the city's tub, since Carlo Mazzoni fled Apulia in 1582 after siding with the French Bourbons in an unsuccessful attempt to overthrow the rule of Spain, and settled here in Assisi, a tiny village in a valley of fig trees, ghosts, and olive groves. Now the Mazzoni family owned half of the lands around the village, yet they had fallen victim to deaths and other demons that made the younger generations go abroad or be forgotten. Although the statement that the lands belonged to the Mazzoni was not entirely true. One man owned them, Zio Matteo, Cora's father. Ugo, his younger brother, had nothing, not even a house where he lived, thanks to the grace and generosity of Zio. He inherited everything and allowed the Ugo family to eat, cultivate, and breathe. And how well we can hide reluctance, Cora thought as the wedding guest approached Palazzo Mazzoni, her uncle's house, the largest building in the village. His wife, Crucifissa, had set the table before. Silverware had appeared on the tablecloths next to the table wall, and now she and the other woman had disappeared into the kitchen. Cora wanted to join them, but the aunts gave her a wolf look and blocked the passage. Where to? They asked. Not today, not in this dress. The living room smelled like chicken in rosemary, tomato sauce, and freshly baked cookies. The men sat down to smoke, the children ran out into the yard, and Cora crouched in the corner, although she would rather play with the kids. She stared at all the oil painting above the fireplace, depicting a vineyard under the clear blue sky. At the edge of the vineyard, an exceptionally tall fig tree caught the sun's rays in its lush green leaves. She remembered that tree. It grew on the edge of the land belonging to Zio Matteo, on the border with Don Paola's estate. The farm boundary became a bone of contention between men, and the dispute over land started by the grandparents lasted for years. Don Paolo claimed it is right to the fig tree, the fruit of which his mother loved so much. After a long battle, the local judge ruled in favor of Zio Matteo, although Don Paolo mothers was spreading rumors that he had been bribed. Having won the case, Matteo took the axe and cut down the trees with his own hands. He did it for two simple reasons: because he wanted to and could. From then on, no one in the village could enjoy its fruits. In the picture, however, the broad ficus leaves stretched out to the sun like spread fingers. Cora fidgeted anxiously in her chair. Being in this room made her think, of course, about Romina, her friend, who used to live here and called this place her home. How is it possible that she missed her wedding, especially since it was her brother's wedding? Romina, her soulmate, almost sister, opened the well to her when they were children, before this nightmare began, when the ghosts were so big that they could devour the whole sky, lick their fingers, and want more. Romina, who seemed to understand the world, who combed Cora's hair and warmed her with milk when her mother was too tired, who hummed her lullabies sung by mothers to little girls, took her to the river for water, Shout her out to face the current and not be afraid of the water when it reached her ankles, knees, and even thighs. She was so brave. She was beaming as she pulled up her skirts and laughed out loud. 2 years younger Cora was standing on the shore, afraid to go further and looking at her feet in the crystal clear water that caressed her skin and kissed her. Romina splashed her and cried, come on, so what if you get your skirts wet? Romina, who showed her how to pluck a chicken, soften so its skin and the feathers will come out by themselves. Properly heated, they will not resist. Dip the bird in the boiling water and let the heat work wonders. Grab it and pull it. And taught her to read. On winter evenings, she would sit in this room reading Cora aloud, every syllable in her mouth sounding delightful and almost delicious. She loved travel books, Odyssey, A Divine Comedy, Almayer's Madness. At the end, she put the book down and began to tell stories in her own words, often adding color to them. In her stories, Odysseus freed himself and swam with mermaids. Joanna Dark escaped from prison before being burned at the stake. On the way through hell, they met the dead from their village, the wife of a shopkeeper, a priest, and ancestors whose names were written in church book. To an adventurous country girl like Romina, even hell seemed attractive. Look, Cora, she said, imagine that you are traveling to places where everything is alien to you, even your face. Imagine. And Cora imagined. When Romina was 9 years old, she found out at the stone washing taps that at a certain age girls begin to bleed. Cora was 7 at the time. They say it hurts. Romina whispered, and little Cora was terrified. Don't worry, her friend reassured her. This will happen to me first, and when the time comes for you, I'll know how to help you. But it didn't. When Cora started to bleed, Romina was gone. The wedding guests arrived within an hour. It would seem that the entire population of the village of 107 came, as well as some visitors from Monte Rosso and Trinita, the two closest villages in the mountains. Since the groom was not there, everyone wanted to talk to Cora, congratulate her, and ask about Argentina she knew nothing about. Married women formed a tight circle around her, which could not be broken in any way. You ready? Did you pack everything? Better that she pack. The carriage will arrive at dawn. At dawn. Your trunk must be full to the brim. Are the winters harsh there? No, Giovanna. It's summer there now. Unbelievable, isn't it? So when it gets there, it will be warm. Even if it is not warm, Stefan will warm her up in no time. Laughter. Poor bride, got married and still has to wait. But it will be worth it. Oh yes, don't worry, Cora. Take our words for it. You'll be fine. Laughter again. Cora, I brought you some hazelnuts from my orchard, for you and Stefan to eat them together when you arrive. How romantic. He will be able to open them for you. That's not what I meant. But he'll do it anyway. What? Do I have to explain everything to you? You do not know? It's not funny enough, ladies, but she always end of the argument. I've got something for you too, Cora. Olives from the last harvest. For you, Stefan. Our Stefan. Yes, for our Stefan. And after all, he will always be our Stefan. Remember when he was caught stealing oranges? How old was he then? Beg, for holy miss. What an overdeveloped boy. Unstoppable. Even if he was earning something, especially then. I never had any trouble with him. He was always polite when he came to the bakery. Si, signora, per favore, signora, small gentleman. Until he grew into a very large gentleman. I bet nothing's small about him. Ha ha, honey is too good for bear. You are lucky, Cora. Everything will be fine. You will build a little kingdom in Argentina. It is not in vain that the name Argentina means silver. Just don't forget about us. You will write to us, right? Of course she will. Cora didn't say a word, and no one asked her to. Dusk fell, and the women's faces twinkled in the light of the kerosene lamps. The musicians who were playing at the far end of the room took a cigarette break, the flutes and violins lying silent on their chairs. Cora's fingers itched to reach for the violin, as in childhood, when she imitated her father, who stroked the neck of the instrument with his fingers, to pluck the strings, reveal the notes, hide from the words, so that no one could stop her, cheat time and chase the melodies with which her papa flooded to the room. The woman ate a second or third addition of cake, and flakes of powdered sugar settled on the lips. They laughed, but only the eyes of a few could see that laugh. Cora felt strange, as if everyone, including her, was playing a play that someone had cut out of the essentials from. Unspeakable words floated in the air, and she couldn't decipher their meaning. The sudden thought that she wouldn't see these faces every day terrified her. What would her world be like without the women who were now surrounding her with a wreath, offering laughter, olives, words of consolation, and other things that they did not dare speak out loud? What were these things, hungry with a dull knife, as if they wanted to go on a journey with her, as if their souls wanted to go overseas, like stowaways crammed into the corner of a trunk? I can't carry that much, she thought. I can't take you with me. She felt lonely, but that's what she wanted, right? For years she had wanted to escape from here. At the age of 13, she began to dream of wrapping bread and clothes in a bundle and going to Naples on foot, or begging the coachman to give her a lift. Naturally, she couldn't do that. She knew the dangers lurking on the road and in the city. She imagined herself climbing Vesuvius and throwing herself into its black cavernous throat. But Vesuvius was far away. How could she get there? 2 weeks after Stefan's 15th birthday, he offered her another option. During his Sunday lunch with his family, he announced that he was going to the New World, and as he spoke, the rays of the afternoon sun cut through the grape-covered trellis and streaked his face with luminous streaks. Shortly thereafter, Cora handed him a note. Let's meet at 9 o'clock under the tall olive tree behind our house. When she arrived at the appointment, he was already waiting for her. He stood in the glare of the crescent moon. Not here, she said. We have to hide. We slipped under the canopy of branches and waved him over to her. Now they were hidden from prying eyes, but not quite safe. Stefan waited for Cora to start the conversation. When do you leave? She asked. In 3 weeks. Why Argentina? And why not? She shifted from foot to foot for a moment. You are excited? I do not know. I think so. You are afraid of? No, he said a little too hastily. She wondered what she was running from. Was it more than the other son's empty pockets and the desire to change? For his sister's death, about things he saw in the dark corners of the house. I would be, excited. Wouldn't you be scared? Maybe a little. They fell silent. Its shadow appeared to be a massive black lamp against the foliage. Cora summoned her courage. Send for me, she began. If you want a wife, a strange sound came from Stefan's mouth, something like being let out from clenched teeth. The moonlight barely broke through the dome of leaves. Cora waited. Would you go? He asked finally. Yes. He was silent for a long moment, like a poker player scrutinizing the cards in his hand. He would be away for a very long time. Yes, probably forever. Yes, I know. You'd have to wait a long time before I send for you. Couple months, maybe even longer. I see. He seemed to be watching her intently. Tough in the darkness, she couldn't be sure. Would you be waiting for me? She was restless. She didn't want to wait. If immigration is the only way to open the borders of her world, she was ready to leave at least already. She wanted to get on board with Stefan, cross the ocean, and start living in a completely new place. But he asked for something else. He pleaded with her to shake off the advances of the other boys. For her, however, it was no sacrifice. Yes, I'll wait. He fell silent again. Now that her eyes adjusted to the dark, she could see the outline of his face. He was watching her carefully. He saw her in a completely new light. Cora, he said, taking her hand. Stefan, we are engaged? He asked. Do you want it? Yes, want. She heard the hesitation in his voice. It sounded like he was trying to convince someone who was sitting on a branch above their heads. But he immediately repeated, this time a little more firmly, yes, I want a wife, someone who knew me here at home. I want you to accompany me to where I'm going. He gently stroked her hand with his thumb. He was a good man, Cora's brother. That's what Cora wants, isn't it? That they would go out into the world together and discover it thanks to their will to live, youth, willingness to take risk and escape. Ah, if only she were here to see it. Tough, perhaps her spirit was hovering somewhere above their heads and looking at them with a joy that relieved Cora of guilt. Stefan too, if he was tormented by what happened to Romina. Cora was sure it was. She wanted to ask him about it, but didn't dare. Then she said, we're engaged. In the weeks leading up to his departure, they met every night under an olive tree. The engagement was announced. Papa reluctantly gave them his blessing. Her mother did not speak to her for a week, as if she had not been there at all, as if her daughter had disappeared into another world, so far away that no one knew if she even existed. But even after that, the nightly trysts were strictly forbidden. Still, no one stopped them. Perhaps the fact that they were cousins made Stefan act like a gentleman. Or maybe they wanted to compensate them for their separation. With each passing night, Stefan seemed more devoted to his resolve, like an exemplary student told to fall in love. In the dark, under a dome of leaves, Cora allowed him to kiss and caress her through her clothes, and after a few nights, he could touch her bare breasts as long as he wanted, first standing, then kneeling in front of her, until the last week they both lay on the ground. His touch soothed her. He made her feel strong and mature. The lace that the branches of the trees weaved from the moonlight grew more modest with each passing night. On the last night together, the moon did not appear in the sky and the bodies were plunged into darkness. Stefan's hands and mouth roamed her breast, and as he did every night, as he clung to her body, he hardened. He hadn't tried to hide it for some time, and his swollen cock pressed against her thigh as if he wanted to say something. Its shape made her curious. What did he look like? What did he want? What if someone walked by and heard Stefan's gasping breath? His body seemed to be on fire with questions she didn't know the answer to. He rubbed against her thigh even harder, and she made no effort to stop him. She didn't know how or even if she wanted it. Her legs were clenched, and he made no effort to pull them apart. Meanwhile, his hands were pressing harder and harder on her breast. Her breathing became faster and louder, and her teeth stunned her body. What is this? She thought. My cousin has turned into a beast, and now it stretches like a string and presses against me in silence. She felt his weight on her. She was holding him. Something seemed to be missing. But what? Knowledge. She wanted to know what Stefan felt. What it's like to be in his skin. They were silent for a moment, and then he said, I can't wait for you to come see me. Time will fly fast if you work hard. Of course I will be, and it actually worked. Part 3. The 21st century has come. Years have passed. Cora, fascinated by Argentinian music that resounds in courtyards, bars and brothels, joins a group of musicians with her instrument, but to play tango, he has to pass for a man. One day Cora took the name of her deceased husband, Stefan, and put on an outfit under which she hid her gender. I said. Cora then entered her senior years when, on a sunny day, she heard that a trip to Peru on Machu Picchu was being organized. For her it was a voice from heaven. She had dreamed of such a trip for many years, and if a trip to Machu Picchu is on your plans, you must arrange transportation for at least 2 months before departure. The easiest way to get from Cusco to Aguas Calientes, a town at the foot of Machu Picchu with handles of all tourist traffic, is by train. Peru Rail is a real monopoly of rail transport on Machu Picchu, but depending on your wallet, you can choose from 3 available brands. Hiram Bingham, the most expensive, Vistadom, still expensive, Expedition reasonable. Prices fluctuate just like in case of airlines. The earlier you buy a ticket, the more dollars will be in your wallet. Considering the length of the route and the price of carries, you can catch your head or your pocket, but you can be sure of one thing. The views admired from the train window are worth every cent. For Machu Picchu, the return trip is an exciting and enjoyable part of the trip, so don't plan an app. A one-way trip by train is 3.5-hour admiration of beautiful, almost postcard mountains landscapes. The white Urubamba River meanders between high rock walls, and on its shores you can admire grazing goats or llamas. The perfect scenery for a positive tune-up before the trip. Peru Rail also rose to the occasion, offering clean and serviceable toilet, as well as drinks and snacks during the trip. The train itself is built in a way that encourages you to constantly bend your neck in all possible ways. Panoramic windows are placed not only on the side of the carriages, but also on the roof. Remember, Cora told friends that the ticket should be picked up in person at several designated points provided in the confirmation email. Upon receipt, you must show your passport and the card with which the payment was made. Interestingly, the baggage allowance on the train is 6 kilograms, but it is not checked very carefully. Nevertheless, it is most convenient to ask for large backpacks or suitcases to be stored at your hostel in Cusco. Here I will also tell you the starting station is in Poroy, approximately 20 kilometers from Cusco. Go there about an hour before departure. Before you start buying an admission ticket, think about what exactly you would like to see. The trip has several variants, as you can also enter the museum Huayna Picchu or the summit called ironically Machu Picchu. Huayna Picchu is a peak that rises 360 meters above Machu Picchu itself and is an additional attraction. There is a separate route to it, so an additional ticket is required, and the views from the top are stunning. The mountain towering over the city of Inca will provide you with an unforgettable panoramic experience due to the fact that only 400 people are admitted to Huayna Picchu per day. There is a shortage of places much earlier, so if you are interested in entering, buy ticket about 2 months earlier. All tickets and information about prices can be found on the official government website, but it is better to be patient, as it cannot be called user-friendly. For those of you who do not speak Spanish, I recommend the ticket purchase instructions. It's time to hit the show. From the center of Aguascalientes, there are buses that will take you to the entrance gates of Machu Picchu. When is the best time to buy bus ticket? It's best not to buy them at all. There are many reasons for this. Firstly, you will save valuable dollars. Secondly, you will miss the Lund key at the counter. The hike from Aguascalientes to the top, depending on your condition, takes till 90 minutes. It is best to plan the trip in the early morning hours, because only then we'll be able to admire the awakening area with completely covered mountain ranges in peace. After reaching the top, you will surely be cornered by guides offering the services in no time. There are crowds at the gate, Sand Gate. The road is straight and the view of the Inca city sunk in the mountains peaks from a greater distance is priceless. A short break at the Sand Gate will surely remain in your memories for a long time. And so on. After your return, you can re-enter the Machu Picchu ruins. Most of the tourists have certainly gone down, and you can enjoy the amazing view, the unspoiled sea and baseball caps and colorful backpacks. The area of ruins is open until 17 o'clock afternoon p.m. So there is a lot of time for quiet contemplation. All over the world, ancient people told stories about gods coming to them from heaven. We usually only hear about popular accounts for Sumerians, Greeks, Egyptians, Mayans, and Indians. Ancient aliens, what might their visit have cost? Usually, when we think about contact with aliens, we imagine modern times, but it is also worth considering how such meeting could have looked like in antiquity. It is possible that such an extraterrestrial contact would cause a real culture shock in people. There is a legend about mysterious deities called Anunnaki who allegedly started human life on Earth. Some believe that the Anunnaki still control us and use us as slaves. According to ancient Sumerian texts, a large proportion of the newly created human population was destroyed in the catastrophic flood described, among others, in the Bible. After the Great Flood, the Anunnaki returned to the home planet to observe and control humans from afar. Perhaps this process continues today, and so on. Cosmic tales, Sumerians, Egyptians. The Dogons from Mali are people living in the South Centers Mali in West Africa. These people have been telling stories for centuries for a group beings known as Nomo, who descended from the stars to Earth and interacted with humans. The Dogons were to obtain from the unusual astronomical information related to the double star Sirius. See, let's listen to the whole story and think about what it means. Coming from a world far beyond the known universe, the Harbinger was sent to Earth to prepare its inhabitants for the return of the cosmic rulers, who once brought them the teachings, since then worshipped as gods. It is said that one day the harbinger was illuminated with warm light as Helios, the sun itself, turned to him. Let the people of earth see my light and feel my warmth, so as they expect me to return to the kingdom soon, like the harbinger. But I am to tell you about Machu Picchu now. This holy city of the Incas is controversial and shrouded in mystery. This place stimulates the imagination and makes you create legend about it. However, there are some undeniable facts related to it. I present the most interesting of them because my dreams came true and I was in Peru. There are several theories about the discovery of Machu Picchu. The most popular one is that Machu Picchu was discovered by academic lecturer and scientist Hiram Bingham III. As the most sensational discoveries are made by chance, Bingham was not looking for the sacred valley of the Incas at all. His purpose was completely different. He organized an expedition to the area of the historic sanctuary to find the last Inca capital, Vilcabamba. According to another theory, Machu Picchu was discovered by the German August Berns. He left behind a series of letters that showed the exact location of the holy city of the Incas. Unfortunately, there also became a serious evidence against the German industrialists. In them, he described a secret deal with the Peruvian authorities, which in exchange for 10% of the profits, allowed the valley to be plundered on a regular basis. Among other things, expensive jewelry disappeared from the tombs and was later sold in Europe. The Incas believed that the earth was the work of humans, not of good. The gods, on the other hand, rewarded the effort put into its creation by offering animals to people. There was, however, a condition. Animals were to remain in Machu Picchu only when the Incas remembered to worship individual deities. Hence the necessity to make sacrifices during established holidays. If the Incas stopped these practices, they would face severe punishment in the form of disasters haunting their land. According to the beliefs of the inhabitants of the Sacred Valley, people once belonged to the gods. However, they were weaker than other deities. Of course, however, they wanted to gain power over the world and other gods. At this point, Viracocha, the creator of the world, who is the father of the sun and the moon, entered. Punishing people for pride, he threw them into the abyss. They grabbed the grain as they fell. This is how the earth was to be formed. Machu Picchu awakens the imagination, among other things, thanks to the amazing buildings created in the Sacred Valley by the Incas. Interestingly, no mortar was used to build them. Nevertheless, they are preserved in perfect condition to this day. You may see this. The Incas did not have animals to help, not the wheel, which was invented later. The question then arises, how did the Inca builders fit the blocks of light granite together so that a perfect and extremely precise structure was created? Many see it as an influence of supernatural forces. Among the Incas, water was especially revered. She was considered a great gift for people. Fountains have therefore become places of worship in the Machu Picchu area. There were a lot of them here. In the most important one, there was rainwater, which flowing into a special channel was then divided into the two streams. Just as the structure in the Sacred Valley were complex, so was the city's water system partially underground. It is evidence of the surprisingly extensive engineering knowledge of the Incas. After all, when the city was abandoned, this system did not stop working. This is just one of the many secrets that have fascinated researchers from all over the world for years. Besides, not only scientists are interested in Machu Picchu, ordinary people are also passionate about this subject. Here I want to end my story. Epilogue. The civilization of the third millennium has finally opened up to human identity and the secrets of man. Our Pope wants to mediate in the peace talks of the world of tomorrow. Does Francis consider himself the last Pope? Does it imply that the Antichrist is already walking our streets and that we are about to elect him as our ruler? Will it be during this generation that the church will be destroyed and God will be able to save the world only through the second coming of the true Savior? We don't know this, so we should see ordinary people better with the problems. And faith helps. The perfect man, he should always speak more than he thinks and always think more than he says. Men now live too early, and we women are too late. That is the difference between a man and a woman. Moreover, everyone is born a king, but most people die in exile, as do most kings. In our area, history eludes God's hand. The gods keep the world on their knees, some say. Sometimes I think that God, when creating man, overestimated his possibilities a bit. I used to think that gratitude was a heavy burden. Now I know it's something that makes the heart light. An ungrateful man is one who has a heavy heart and legs of lead. But when you know the extraordinary joy of gratitude to God and man, the earth becomes more beautiful. It is pleasant to count not your riches but debts, not the little ones you have, but the great ones you owe. Then to anyone who has at least one free friend, God has given 2 words. Stephen, with his departure to the other side, gave me 2 words. If the gods want to punish us, only fulfill our request. And Stephen's passion for life continues. I only emphasized it. People don't understand that criticism is a produce, because to understand you have to love, and to love you have to have passion. And this was the passion of the inhabitants of Machu Picchu. However, nature is inconvenient. The longer I live, the more I see that what was good enough for our fathers is not good enough for us. We used to have the habit of canonizing our heroes, and now we trivialize them. All the more in the face of the eternal truth. We must say persevere on the way of the fulfillment of our eternal dream of human happiness. And so on.